been doing everything. You show up consistently despite their inconsistency. You provide emotional support despite receiving minimal support in return. You're patient with their patterns, understanding about their wounds, accepting of their limitations. You plan the dates, initiate the conversations, maintain the connection through your sustained effort. You remember what matters to them, celebrate their successes, offer perspective during their struggles. You adjust your schedule to accommodate theirs. You give them space when they withdraw. You're there when they return. You organize your emotional life around their availability. You love them through their defenses, their distance, their hot and cold behavior. You do all of this believing that eventually they'll notice. Eventually they'll recognize the effort you're putting in. Eventually they'll appreciate the consistency you're providing. Eventually they'll value the love you're offering and reciprocate in kind. But they don't notice. Not because they're oblivious, not because they're intentionally ungrateful, but because the avoidance psychology is structured in ways that make them literally incapable of valuing what you're doing for them. All your effort, all the showing up, all the patience, all the understanding, all the accommodation, all the love you're pouring into this relationship, it doesn't register in their system as valuable because it's too available, too consistent, too much like the security their defensive structure is designed to prevent them from depending on. The avoidant doesn't value what you do for them because doing things for them confirms availability, and availability is what their defensive system takes for granted while simultaneously defending against depending on. Every time you show up, you're proving you'll be there. Every time you're patient, you're demonstrating you'll tolerate their patterns. Every time you give them space and accept their return, you're confirming they can withdraw without consequence. All of this registers in their system not as gift to be valued, but as confirmation of a status quo they can continue to take for granted. They don't appreciate your consistency because consistency is white noise. It's always there, so it becomes invisible. They don't value your effort because effort that's consistently given requires no reciprocal effort to maintain your presence. They don't recognize your love as special because love that's unconditionally available, despite their patterns, doesn't feel like something they need to work for or protect. The avoidant only values one thing: what they cannot have, what they're losing, what requires them to actually work or change or show up differently to obtain or maintain. They don't value your presence. They value your absence when it finally arrives. They don't value your availability. They value your unavailability when you finally enforce it. They don't value your consistent love. They value the loss of your love when you finally withdraw it. This is the devastating truth about avoidance psychology that most people, loving avoidance, never understand until it's too late. Everything you do for them while you're doing it is worthless in their psychological economy. It only gains value retroactively, after you've stopped doing it, after you've withdrawn it, after you're gone, and they're experiencing the void where your effort used to be. The avoidant values only what they're losing or what they've lost. And understanding this, understanding that all you're doing for them means nothing while you're doing it and only becomes valuable after you stop, changes everything about how you approach the relationship and whether you should remain in it at all. Why? Your effort, consistency, and love don't register as valuable to the avoidance system. The avoidance inability to value what you do for them isn't character flaw or conscious choice. It's how their defensive psychology processes relationship inputs. Understanding the mechanism helps you see why your effort is invisible to them. Anything consistently available becomes background they take for granted. The avoidance system only foregrounds what's uncertain, threatened, or being withdrawn. Human psychology generally adapts to consistent stimuli by moving them to background awareness. Constant sound becomes unnoticed. consistent temperature becomes unremarkable. This adaptation allows us to notice changes rather than being overwhelmed by stable conditions. But the avoidance system takes this adaptation to extreme with relationship inputs. Your consistent presence, your reliable support, your sustained effort, all of it becomes background noise precisely because it's consistent. Their system stops foregrounding it because it's stable. What their system does foreground is change, threat, loss. When you withdraw, when you become unavailable, when you stop doing what you've been consistently doing, that registers as change, and change captures attention. While you're consistently there, you're invisible. The moment you're not there, you become hypervisible. This isn't conscious choice. This is how their defensive system allocates attention. Stable inputs that confirm safety are ignored. Threatening inputs that suggest loss are noticed. You're doing everything for them is stable input that their system learns to ignore. You're stopping doing things for them is threatening input that finally captures their attention. Their defensive structure is built to prevent dependence. So your reliability gets processed as thing to defend against rather than thing to appreciate. The avoidance core defensive project is maintaining independence by preventing dependence on anyone. When you show up consistently, when you're reliably there, when you provide ongoing support, their system doesn't process this as gift. It processes it as potential threat. Because if they start depending on your consistency, if they begin relying on your reliability, if they get used to your support, they're creating vulnerability to loss. If they depend on you and you leave, they'll be hurt. So their defensive system protects against depending on you by not allowing your reliability to feel significant. They process your consistency as background reality that doesn't require their investment or appreciation, because appreciating it would mean acknowledging they value it, and acknowledging they value it would mean admitting they'd be affected by losing it, and admitting they'd be affected by losing it would create the dependency vulnerability the entire defensive structure exists to prevent. Your reliability is defended against rather than appreciated, because appreciation would create dependence. Their system is designed to prevent. They unconsciously expect you to always be there, so your continued presence doesn't feel like choice you're making, but like guaranteed constant they don't need to work to maintain. Because you've been consistently there, because you've tolerated their patterns, because you've accepted their returns after withdrawal, because you've demonstrated through sustained behavior that you'll be available, their unconscious mind has learned to expect this. And what's expected isn't valued. What's expected is assumed. What's expected is taken for granted. Your presence has become expected constant in their psychological landscape. And expected constants don't require appreciation or reciprocal effort. The sun rises every morning, and we don't feel grateful for it daily because it's expected. Your presence has become like sunrise to them, expected, constant, not requiring their effort to maintain. They don't recognize that your presence is choice you're making that could be unmade. They don't see that your continued showing up, despite their patterns, is active effort on your part. They experience it as just how things are. You're there, you'll continue being there. This is stable reality that doesn't require their attention or their work to preserve. The expectation eliminates the valuing. Your doing things for them confirms you're more invested, which gives them power and safety, while eliminating any urgency to reciprocate. Every time you do something for them, initiate plans, provide support, show patience, accommodate their needs, you're demonstrating greater investment in the relationship than they're demonstrating. This investment differential creates power dynamic where they have more power because they're less invested, and having more power feels safe to the avoidant. Safe because they're not the vulnerable one. Safe because they could leave more easily than you could leave. safe because they care less, which means they'd hurt less if relationship ended. Your doing things for them is constantly confirming this power differential in their favor, and confirmation of their power position eliminates any urgency to reciprocate. Why reciprocate when lack of reciprocation doesn't create consequences? Why match your effort when you continue showing up despite them not matching effort? Why do more when doing less maintains favorable power dynamic and doesn't risk losing you? Your doing everything for them is teaching them they don't need to do equivalent things for you. The investment differential your effort creates is comfortable for them and disincentivizes changing the differential through reciprocal effort. The avoidant is wired to value scarcity and threat. Abundance of your love and effort triggers defense rather than appreciation. Scarcity creates value. This is basic psychological principle. Things that are rare feel more valuable than things that are abundant. Things you might lose feel more precious than things that are guaranteed. The avoidance system is particularly sensitive to this dynamic because their wounds make them hypervigilant to threat and relatively numb to safety. Your abundant love, your consistent effort, your reliable presence, this abundance doesn't trigger their valuing system. Abundance triggers their defensive system. Too much availability feels suffocating. Too much consistency feels like pressure. Too much love feels like obligation or trap. The abundance of what you're offering activates their defenses against being consumed or controlled or trapped, rather than activating appreciation for what's being offered. But scarcity, the absence of your love, the withdrawal of your effort, the loss of your presence, this triggers their threat detection system, and suddenly, what was invisible becomes hypervisible. What was unvalued becomes desperately wanted. What was taken for granted becomes mourned. The avoidant is wired to value what they're losing, not what they have. Your abundance of effort while you're giving it triggers defense. Your scarcity of effort when you withdraw it triggers valuing. This wiring is why everything you do for them is invisible until you stop doing it. The one thing, avoidance, actually value and why. It's the opposite of what you've been providing. Understanding what the avoidant actually values and why it's fundamentally different from everything you're doing is crucial for deciding whether to continue investing effort that isn't being recognized or appreciated. Avoidants value what they cannot have, the person who's unavailable, the connection that's uncertain, the love that might be withdrawn. The avoidance valuing system is triggered by inaccessibility. What they cannot easily access becomes desirable. What they're not sure they can have becomes wanted. What might be withdrawn becomes precious. This is why they often value exes more than current partners, why they want what they rejected once it's gone, why they pursue people who are unavailable while taking available people for granted. The psychological mechanism is that inaccessibility activates their desire system, while accessibility activates their defensive system. When something is uncertain, when they might not be able to have it, their system engages in pursuit. When something is certain, when they know they have it, their system disengages because certainty doesn't require pursuit, and pursuit is the mode that activates their engagement. You being consistently available makes you certain. Certain means not requiring pursuit. Not requiring pursuit means their engagement system turns off. Your unavailability would make you uncertain. Uncertain would require pursuit. Requiring pursuit would activate engagement. The tragic irony is that by being everything they need, you've made yourself undesirable to their specific psychology, because what they need triggers their defenses, while what they can't have triggers their desire. They value the chase more than the relationship. The work of pursuing someone is what activates their engagement, while having someone removes the activation. The avoidant is activated by challenge, by work, by pursuit, by the effort required to obtain something. This activation feels like aliveness, feels like desire, feels like engagement. But once the thing is obtained, once the person is secured, once the relationship is established, once the pursuit is over, the activation ends. Having you doesn't create the same neurological activation that pursuing you created. The challenge is gone. The work is done. The pursuit is over. And without the activation that pursuit created, the relationship feels flat, feels less compelling, feels less alive. This is why avoidants often seem most engaged during early relationship stages when outcome is uncertain, then gradually disengage as relationship becomes secure. The security you're offering, the certainty of your presence, the reliability of your love eliminates the challenge that activated their engagement. You being available means they're not pursuing you anymore. Not pursuing means not activated. Not activated means not engaged. They value the chase because the chase activates them. They don't value the relationship once secured because security doesn't activate them the way uncertainty did. Avoidants value their independence more than they value partnership. Anything you do that confirms partnership threatens the independence they hold as core identity. The avoidance core value is independence. This isn't just preference, it's identity. I'm independent is who they believe they are at fundamental level. Anything that threatens this identity threatens their sense of self. And partnership inherently threatens independence because partnership requires interdependence, requires considering someone else's needs, requires coordinating rather than unilaterally deciding, requires some sacrifice of pure independence for mutual benefit. Every time you do something for them, every time you show up as partner, every time you act in ways that confirm you're building partnership, you're triggering threat to their core identity. The partnership you're building is exactly what threatens the independence they value more than the partnership itself. This is why your effort to build partnership gets devalued or resisted or defended against. You're offering partnership, they value independence. Partnership threatens independence. Therefore, partnership gets defended against rather than embraced. You're doing things for them in service of partnership is fighting against their core value rather than aligning with it. You cannot win this fight because you're asking them to value something less than they value their identity. They value what they might lose more than what they have. Loss aversion is stronger than appreciation for possession in their psychological economy. Behavioral economics demonstrates that humans generally fear loss more than they value equivalent gain. Losing $100 feels worse than gaining $100 feels good. The avoidance system takes this loss aversion to extreme in relationships. They don't particularly value having you. Having you is comfortable, expected, taken for granted. But losing you would feel terrible because loss triggers their abandonment wounds and their ego wounds around being rejected or not mattering. So they value not losing you more than they value having you. This is crucial distinction. They want to keep you, not because they deeply appreciate what you provide while providing it, but because losing you would trigger painful feelings they want to avoid. This is why they often only seem to recognize your value after you're gone, because only after you're gone are they experiencing the loss that their system responds to with intensity. While you're present, you're just possession they have. When you're absent, you're loss they're experiencing. Loss triggers their system. Possession doesn't. Everything you do for them while you're present is in the category of possession. It doesn't trigger strong response. Your absence and the loss it represents is what finally triggers the response that looks like valuing you. But it's not valuing you for what you did. It's fearing the loss. This distinction matters enormously. Avoidants value feeling in control, and your consistent availability gives them control, which feels comfortable but doesn't create appreciation for you providing it. The avoidant needs control to feel safe. Control means they can predict outcomes, can manage what happens, can prevent being hurt by situations they didn't choose. Your consistent availability gives them enormous control. They control when to engage. You're always available when they want engagement. They control intimacy levels. They can withdraw when intimacy feels too intense, and you'll be there when they want to re-engage. They control the relationship pace. You accommodate their pace rather than requiring your pace. They control where the relationship continues. You've demonstrated you won't leave, despite their patterns, so they hold the power to end things if they choose. All this control feels comfortable and safe to them, but comfort and safety don't create appreciation. They create complacency. When you feel in control, when you feel safe, when you feel comfortable, you don't feel grateful for the things providing those feelings. You just expect them. You're providing them with control through your availability, is giving them what makes them comfortable, while simultaneously eliminating any urgent need to appreciate what you're giving. They value the control. They don't value you for providing it. Once again, what you're doing for them doesn't register as valuable because the comfort it creates allows them to take it for granted. How your continued effort, without recognition, is actually harming you and enabling their pattern. Understanding what your unrecognized effort is costing you helps you see why continuing to do things for someone who doesn't value what you're doing is destructive to you and to any possibility of healthy relationship. You're teaching them that your effort is free, that they can receive your love and care without reciprocating, which creates dynamic where you deplete yourself while they remain comfortable. Every time you do something for them without receiving reciprocal effort, you're teaching their system that your effort doesn't require reciprocation, that your presence doesn't require their work to maintain, that your love is available regardless of how little love you receive in return. This teaching creates dynamic where you're constantly depleting yourself, giving emotional energy, time, care, effort, while receiving insufficient return. You're running a deficit. Your tank is emptying while theirs stays comfortably full through what you're providing, without requiring them to provide equivalent refilling for you. This depletion isn't sustainable. You're training them that they can take from you indefinitely without giving back. That relationship is one-directional resource flow from you to them. This dynamic harms you through exhaustion and depletion, while enabling them to remain in comfortable defended position where they receive benefits without vulnerability of reciprocal giving. The dynamic you're creating through continued unreciprocated effort is bad for both of you. It's destroying you, and it's preventing them from having to grow. Your accepting less than you deserve is confirming their belief that they don't need to change. If you stay, despite their patterns, those patterns are clearly working and don't require modification. The avoidant learns through behavioral consequences. If their patterns result in losing people, they learn patterns have costs and might be motivated to change patterns. But if their patterns don't result in losing people, if you stay despite the patterns, if you continue showing up despite their emotional unavailability, if you keep doing things for them despite lack of reciprocation, they learn patterns are sustainable. Why change what's working? Your acceptance of less than you deserve is confirming that their current approach successfully maintains relationship without requiring them to be more available or more reciprocal. Your staying despite insufficient treatment is the strongest possible message that insufficient treatment is sufficient. Not because you're saying it's sufficient with words, but because you're demonstrating it's sufficient through continued presence. Behavior speaks louder than words. Your behavior is teaching them they don't need to change because what they're currently doing is adequate to keep you. This teaching prevents their growth and enables the continuation of patterns that will ultimately destroy any relationship they're in until they address them. You're sacrificing your needs to accommodate theirs, creating resentment that builds, even when you're trying to suppress it, eventually poisoning the connection you're working so hard to maintain. When you consistently prioritize their needs over yours, when you accommodate their limitations while your needs go unmet, when you do for them while they don't equivalently do for you, you're creating conditions for resentment. Even if you're consciously trying to be understanding, even if you're intellectually accepting their limitations, even if you're attempting to love without expectation, the resentment builds anyway, because resentment is natural response to sustained inequity. You're human. You have needs. When your needs are consistently unmet, while you're consistently meeting someone else's needs, resentment accumulates. It might be subtle. It might be suppressed. It might be rationalized. But it's there, and it's growing. And this growing resentment poisons the connection. It makes your efforts less genuine. It makes your love more dutiful than spontaneous. It creates internal conflict between your conscious choice to stay and your emotional response to being undervalued. The resentment eventually expresses itself through passive aggression, through emotional withdrawal, through the relationship feeling increasingly hollow to you, even as you continue going through the motions. Your sacrifice of your needs isn't creating better relationship. It's creating resentment that will eventually destroy whatever connection exists. The effort you're putting in is preventing you from being available for relationship with someone who would actually value what you offer. Every hour you spend doing things for the avoidant is hour you're not available for someone else. Every emotional resource you're investing in, trying to make unreciprocal relationship work, is resource. You could be investing in relationship with someone whose psychology allows them to recognize and reciprocate what you provide. Every day you remain committed to person who doesn't value your effort. Stay, you're not available to meet person who would value it. The opportunity cost of your continued effort with the avoidant is enormous. You're blocking yourself from the relationship you deserve by continuing to invest in relationship that will never give you what you need, because the person you're with is psychologically incapable of valuing what you're doing for them. Your effort with them is preventing your availability for someone whose effort would match yours. This is perhaps the highest cost, not just what you're losing in the current relationship, but what you're preventing yourself from finding by remaining in it. You're normalizing relationship pattern that's fundamentally unsustainable, teaching yourself that love means constant giving without receiving, which will damage your ability to recognize healthy, reciprocal relationship if you encounter one. Beyond the opportunity cost, your continued participation in unreciprocal relationship is training your own psychology in dangerous ways. You're learning that love means one-sided effort, that caring means depleting yourself, that healthy relationship feels like constant work without reward. You're normalizing dynamics that are fundamentally unhealthy. And this normalization is dangerous because it becomes your baseline. If you eventually leave this relationship and encounter someone who wants to love you reciprocally, their reciprocity might feel unfamiliar or wrong or like they're too much. Because you've trained yourself that one-sided effort is what love looks like. You're damaging your ability to recognize and receive healthy love by staying in unhealthy dynamic long enough that unhealthy becomes your normal. This training might persist long after you leave the current relationship, making it harder to build the healthy relationship you deserve, even when you encounter someone capable of providing it. Why withdrawing your effort is the only thing that might make them recognize what you are providing. Understanding that the avoidant only values what they're losing means that withdrawing your effort is the only action that might create recognition, though recognition itself might come too late to matter. Your presence was invisible, your absence will be hypervisible, and finally force them to catalog everything they took for granted. While you're doing everything for them, it's invisible, it's background, it's expected. They don't consciously register all the ways you're showing up. But the moment you stop, the moment your effort is withdrawn, your presence is removed. Your love is no longer available. All of it becomes hypervisible through its absence. They'll notice you're not there to support them. They'll notice no one's initiating plans anymore. They'll notice the void where your understanding used to be. They'll notice all the small things you did that made their life easier. The absence makes visible what presence kept invisible. And forced to catalog what's missing, they finally recognize what you were providing. This recognition almost always comes through absence because their psychology cannot value abundance, cannot appreciate what's consistently there, can only recognize value through experiencing the void where value used to be. Your withdrawal is what creates the void that finally makes them see what they had. Your continued availability was teaching them you'd always accept them back. Your unavailability teaches that their patterns have permanent consequences. Throughout your availability, they learned they could withdraw, and you'd still be there when they wanted to return. Could take you for granted, and you'd still be available. Could put in minimal effort, and relationship would continue. These lessons taught them their patterns were consequence-free, but your unavailability teaches different lesson. Patterns have permanent consequences. Taking you for granted resulted in losing you. Minimal effort resulted in relationship ending. Withdrawal was met with your absence rather than your pursuit. This teaching is what might eventually motivate change. Not your explaining the consequences in words, but you're enforcing the consequences through your absence, demonstrating what their patterns actually cost. Your unavailability is education they couldn't receive while you were available, because availability taught them they could continue as they were. Unavailability teaches them that continuation is no longer possible. The loss of your effort will create void they cannot fill with anyone else, forcing recognition that what you provided was specific to you and irreplaceable. They might assume they can replace you, find someone else who'll do what you did, get their needs met elsewhere. But your withdrawal often reveals that what you provided was specific to you, your specific understanding of them, your specific patience with their patterns, your specific consistency that required your specific capacity. Someone else might provide some things, but not all things, not in the way you provided them, not with the depth or the quality or the specific attunement you brought. The void your absence creates cannot be easily filled. And discovering this, trying to replace you, and finding everyone insufficient by comparison, is what creates recognition that what you were providing was rare, was valuable, was specific to you, rather than generic relationship benefit available from anyone. This recognition of your irreplaceability is what your presence could never create, because your presence allowed them to believe anyone could do what you were doing. Your absence proves they were wrong. They'll miss what you did only after experiencing life without it, making your withdrawal the education your words and patience never accomplished. You probably tried to communicate what you were providing, tried to help them see the effort you were putting in, tried to make them appreciate what you were doing, and the communication didn't work because words don't create recognition in someone whose psychology can't value what's present. But experiencing life without what you provided, that educates in ways words never could. Struggling without your support teaches them support was valuable. Being alone because no one initiates contact teaches them your initiation was valuable. Having no one who understands them teaches them your understanding was valuable. The education happens through lived experience of absence rather than through intellectual communication about presence. Your withdrawal is teaching in the only language the avoidance psychology actually learns from, the language of experiential consequence rather than the language of verbal explanation. Recognition might motivate change, but often the recognition comes too late because you've already moved on and are no longer available for relationship, even if they become capable. This is the crucial caveat. Your withdrawal might create recognition. The recognition might even motivate genuine transformation. They might do the therapeutic work, might address their patterns, might develop capacity they didn't have when you were together. But this transformation often occurs after you've already moved on, after you've healed, after you've built life without them, after you're no longer available or interested in returning, even if they've changed. The recognition coming too late means it serves their future, but not your present. They learn, they grow, but you're not there to benefit from the growth because the growth required losing you, and by the time growth occurs, you've already found better life without them. This is appropriate outcome. They get education they needed. You get freedom you deserved. But it means your withdrawal is gift to their future self and future partners rather than intervention that saves the current relationship. The relationship is over. The recognition happens after. This is usually how it goes. What continuing to do things for someone who doesn't value them says about your relationship with yourself. The avoidance inability to value your effort is their limitation, but your continuing to provide effort that goes unvalued reveals something about your own relationship with yourself that requires examination. If you're staying despite lack of recognition, you're possibly demonstrating that you don't value your own effort either. Accepting that it's okay to give without receiving teaches you that your giving isn't worth reciprocation. When you continue providing effort that goes unrecognized and unreciprocated, you're sending message to yourself about your worth. You're teaching yourself that your effort is worth giving even when it's not valued, that your love is appropriate to pour out even when it's not honored, that your time and energy are okay to invest even when the investment produces no return. This teaching damages your relationship with yourself. It confirms that you don't value your own resources highly enough to require that others value them too. The avoidant not valuing your effort is their limitation. You accepting that lack of value is your limitation. It suggests that somewhere you believe you don't deserve reciprocal effort, don't deserve to have your giving matched, don't deserve to be with someone who recognizes what you provide. This belief, whether conscious or unconscious, is what allows you to stay in dynamic where you're undervalued. Healthy self-relationship would say, my effort has value and I will only give it where it's recognized and reciprocated. Damaged self-relationship says, my effort is okay to give even where it's ignored. You might be trying to prove your worth through what you do for them, but worth that requires proving through constant effort isn't genuine recognition of inherent value. If you're doing things for the avoidant, hoping they'll finally recognize your worth, hoping your consistent effort will prove you're valuable, hoping that enough doing will create the recognition you're seeking, you're operating from belief that your worth needs to be proven rather than simply being inherent. Worth shouldn't require proving. Value shouldn't require constant demonstration. Someone who's capable of healthy relationship recognizes your value because of who you are, not because of accumulated evidence of what you do. The need to prove worth through doing suggests either you don't believe in your inherent worth or you're with someone incapable of recognizing inherent worth, or both. Either way, the dynamic is unhealthy. You proving worth through effort while they fail to recognize the worth regardless of effort, is cycle that cannot lead to you feeling genuinely valued, because genuine value isn't contingent on performance or proof. It's recognized inherently, or it's not recognized at all. Your continued effort to prove worth to someone who doesn't recognize it is exhausting quest that cannot succeed. Your tolerance of being undervalued might stem from childhood patterns where love was conditional on meeting others' needs, making you comfortable with one-sided dynamics that replicate early relationship templates. Many people who stay in relationships where their effort goes unrecognized are repeating childhood patterns. If your early experience taught you that love was conditional on being useful, on meeting others' needs, on being the one who gives, then relationship where you're constantly doing for someone while receiving little in return feels familiar. Not good, but familiar. And familiar often feels safer than healthy but unfamiliar. You might be unconsciously seeking to replay early dynamics where your value was contingent on what you provided rather than on who you were. The avoidant relationship gives you opportunity to continue the pattern: constant giving, minimal receiving, worth based on utility rather than inherent being. This replication of childhood patterns feels comfortable in deeply uncomfortable way. Recognizing this pattern is essential for breaking it. The avoidant isn't making you stay. You're choosing to stay in dynamic that replicates early experiences where love was one-directional and conditional. Continuing to give where you're not valued suggests fear that you won't find someone who does value you, leading you to settle for someone who doesn't, rather than risking being alone while seeking someone who will. The fundamental question is, why stay with someone who doesn't value what you do for them? Often, the answer is fear. Fear that no one else would value you either. Fear that this is the best you can get. Fear that being alone would be worse than being undervalued. Fear that you won't find someone whose psychology allows them to recognize and reciprocate what you offer. These fears make you settle, make you accept less than you deserve, make you continue investing in relationship that's not giving you what you need, because at least it's something, and something feels safer than the risk of nothing. But this fear-based settling is self-fulfilling. If you stay with someone who doesn't value you, you guarantee you won't find someone who does, because you're not available. The fear of not finding someone who values you keeps you with someone who doesn't value you, which prevents you from ever finding someone who would. The fear defeats itself. Breaking this cycle requires risking being alone, trusting that your worth will be recognized by someone whose psychology allows recognition, believing that alone is better than undervalued. This is terrifying risk, but it's the only path to relationship where your effort is actually valued. Why recognizing this dynamic is the first step toward either getting what you deserve or leaving to find it elsewhere. Understanding that the avoidant only values what they're losing and doesn't value what you're doing for them creates crucial choice point that determines your future. You can continue doing things that won't be valued, or you can withdraw your effort and discover whether its absence creates recognition or confirms you should leave entirely. Understanding the dynamic gives you choice. You can continue as you have been, doing everything, receiving minimal reciprocation, hoping eventually they'll notice and appreciate. This path leads to continued depletion, continued resentment, continued relationship where you're undervalued. Or you can withdraw your effort, stop initiating, stop accommodating, stop doing the things you've been doing. This withdrawal will reveal one of two outcomes. Either your absence creates recognition in them that your presence couldn't create, and they finally understand what they had and potentially do the work to become capable of valuing you while having you. Or your absence confirms that they're incapable of valuing you regardless of what you do or don't do, in which case you have clarity that leaving is correct choice. Either way, withdrawing your effort is the only path toward possible change in the dynamic. Continuing ensures nothing changes. Withdrawing creates possibility of change, or confirmation that change is impossible. Recognizing you deserve to be valued for what you provide, not just mourned after you're gone, is essential for maintaining standard that serves your well-being. You deserve to be valued now, while you're present, for what you're currently doing, not retroactively after you leave, not in their future when they've learned from losing you. Now, this recognition is essential standard. You don't exist to be the person whose loss teaches someone else's future lessons. You don't exist to be appreciated in retrospect. You exist to be loved and valued in real time by someone whose psychology allows them to recognize what they have while they have it. Maintaining this standard means refusing to accept someone whose only way of valuing you is through your absence. It means requiring current recognition, current reciprocation, current appreciation. And if someone cannot provide current valuing, you leave, not hoping they'll value you someday, not waiting for them to learn. You leave and find someone who already knows how to value presence rather than needing loss to teach them. The avoidant learning to value you through losing you is their education. You deserving to be valued while present is your standard that should never be compromised. The avoidant might learn from losing you, might grow, might become capable. This serves their development and benefits their future relationships. This is their education. But you don't have to sacrifice yourself to provide their education. Your standard isn't, eventually, they'll learn from losing me. Your standard is, I will be with someone who already knows how to value me. These are different standards. One sacrifices you for their growth. One protects you while requiring they arrive already capable. Choose the second. You're not responsible for their education. You're responsible for honoring yourself. And honoring yourself means being with someone who doesn't need to lose you to recognize what they had. Find someone who sees your value while you're giving it, who reciprocates your effort while you're making it, who appreciates your love while you're offering it. That person exists. That person's psychology allows them to value presence rather than only valuing absence. You deserve that person. Go find them. Avoidants don't notice what you do for them. Everything you do while you're doing it is invisible. Your effort, your consistency, your love, your sacrifice of your needs to accommodate theirs. It doesn't register as valuable because their defensive psychology can only value what they're losing, what they can't have, what's uncertain or threatened or being withdrawn. They value only one thing, the absence of what they took for granted while it was present. Your presence is worthless in their psychological economy. Your absence is priceless. This means everything you're doing for them now, all the showing up, all the patience, all the understanding, all the effort, is meaningless to them while you're doing it. It will only gain meaning after you stop, after you withdraw, after you're gone and they're experiencing the void. This is the devastating truth about loving an avoidant. What you do for them doesn't matter. What you stop doing for them does. Stop doing. Stop showing up. Stop being available. Stop providing effort they don't value and won't value until it's gone. And once you've stopped, once they potentially recognize what they lost, don't return to provide what they can now supposedly appreciate. Because if you return, your presence will become expected again, will become background again, will stop being valued again. The dynamic will repeat. Instead, use your withdrawal to find someone whose psychology values presence rather than absence. Someone who sees your effort while you're making it. Someone who appreciates your love while you're giving it. Someone who recognizes your value while they have access to you, rather than needing to lose you to learn what you are worth. That person exists. Your effort has value. Your love has worth. Your consistency deserves appreciation. Find someone who can provide appreciation while you're present, rather than wasting it on someone who can only value you in your absence. You deserve current valuing, not retrospective recognition. Never forget